Hey, back down to Sear Performance. We got another project in that we're going to be working on over the next couple of weeks to knock it out as quick as we can. But here's what we got. It's a 94, I believe he said, Chevy Caprice. Got a bunch of stuff done to it. It's got all drilled and slotted rotors all the way around. I know he said it's got some suspension components. Not really sure what else has been done, but the old LT1 350 kept giving him trouble with the OptiSpark, which is the distributor in the front of these motors. They sit down here and it runs all the spark plug wires come off sideways and tuck up, and a lot of people had issues with them. Never really got into them, so never really experienced issues ourselves, but we're going to be pulling this one out, and we have a 5.3 on its way, low mileage 5.3 on its way. This customer does want to reuse his AC. As of right now, it's got, according to the customer, which we can't verify because obviously it doesn't run, but according to him, it's fully charged and working and everything. So he wants to keep the AC with the swap. So we'll be doing that for him, tying in the AC to the LS compressor. So we'll go through that when the time comes. I mean, as of right now, the car is a little bit in shambles. I mean, just looking at it quick, we got it in the other day. I looked at it, pretty much just kind of peaked a little bit, and then today came over and started looking through some stuff, and it's a jumble of a wiring mess, which, you know, I think these are like the HID headlight kit or something like that. Not really sure, but it runs all the way up along the cowl, comes down over here to the fender well, where it's just a mess of wires with wire nuts and everything. But we may address some of that, we may not address any of it. All depends on what exactly the customer is looking for. But the first thing I like to do with something like this is, you know, the LS's take, if you run them fuel injection, they take 58 psi of fuel pressure, and that's a big factor. You could have a little bit more and get a regulator and push it down, or use like a factory stock regulator on the rail, and it'll control it to a point. So one of the first things I like to do is that port right there, is you grab a fuel pressure tester, like one of these here, one of these. Fuel injection pressure goes up to 100 psi, and then it's got the fancy little fitting on the end, and that literally will screw right on to that fitting, and then it'll spray a bunch of fuel on your hand, because it's usually almost always pressurized. But so that being hooked up, kind of try and get it into a spot that you can read it, something like that. Sometimes you can get them, you know, to come up here. Doesn't really matter, because what you'll do is, this battery's disconnected too, so hopefully, it's got charge. So I just heard the pump go off, and it is sitting at 45 psi right now. Looks like it went up a little bit. No, 45 psi. So with something like this, you kind of have an option, and that could be what the regulator is set to, which is most likely what the case is. This is the regulator right here, but they normally run off a vacuum. So it could be that regulator is set to like a 43 psi. That's about where it's at right now, is 43 psi. It's actually right at 44. So I believe these are 43 psi is kind of where these ones run at, these LT1s. But I believe if got lost there looking around, I gotta stop looking around. But with these, what I'm 99% positive on right now is that we could disconnect these fuel rails. And the nice thing about this is kind of the LS style, same size, same quick connect style. So we would be able to disconnect those lines, reuse the factory feed and return, because the LS will have them right here on a truck style intake. Obviously on this car, I don't believe a truck intake will fit. We're gonna try it. If it doesn't fit, I have like a LS4 style intake, which is off a car and it's got like a choke down neck and stuff like that. But you can use like that style LS1, LS2, LS6 style intake. You could actually get them right off of Amazon. They're pretty cheap, or you can find one used. Sometimes you can find them cheap, just all depends on which one you're going after. But we can hook those up, and either the factory regulator, or worst case scenario, you can convert those over to like an AN style with a push-in fitting. This way we don't have to go through and run all new lines and all that. Obviously I'll look at the lines going back. If they're rotted, you know, obviously it's better to change the lines, but I don't think, I mean, there's not a lot of rust or rot on brake lines and stuff on this car, so I don't think this car was ill taken care of in that sense that we would have to change all the fuel lines and stuff. So first option is going to be to try and reuse those on a truck intake. Again, not sure if the truck intake will fit under the cowl. Maybe with some trimming off the tabs and stuff, it'll fit. I won't know until I get the motor here and kind of get it stuffed down in there. Second option is to reuse the lines, shove the quick connects in, have an external regulator for the return line, so we can come into the regulator, out of the regulator to the rail, and then off the regulator to that return line, feed it back to the tank. And then you pretty much keep, you know, some of your factory stuff in place, and it makes a little bit cheaper. But those are things we'll go through. The other thing with this is it's gonna go on a Holley Terminator, Terminator X Max, actually, because this does have a 4L60 transmission. So we'll be using the Terminator X Max kit with the transmission control. I believe that will work for this transmission. It's a little bit of research I got to do, but it's not an issue, being that it's a 94. And then I'm gonna reuse his exhaust. That's what I'm kind of looking at right now. There's catalytic converters on both sides, but the positioning of the pipes is somewhat close to where the LS manifolds would drop down. and I'm kind of looking, I think the LS manifolds will clear on this car. I haven't looked at other swaps in this generation car. I haven't looked at videos or nothing like that. So this will be the first one we do on this style car. So it'll be a little bit of a learning curve for us, but we will get it done as quick as we can for the customer, and we'll make it as nice as we can. And I also have a little bit of sort of a gift, if you want to say a gift, but a freebie for them that'll help with the performance of the car and stuff. So we'll be going through everything on that. The interior on this car is like super nice dark tint so you can look at me, but the interior is pretty clean. Looks like it was an old police car. And it was kept up good, so all of the gauges work, which is good. Car's got 237,000 miles on it right now. It's got great oil pressure when it's not running, apparently. But we'll address all that. I'm going to try to have everything on the dashboard work. Obviously, the fuel level will need to work. The battery voltage, we'll make that work. The coolant should be able to get that work. The speedometer, with the Terminator X Max, I'm not 100% on those. We usually do the Terminator X, but I have to see if that has a speed output to match to his digital speedometer. And then the oil pressure shouldn't be an issue to get that to work. So with all that said, I'll shut the key off. Excuse me. You know, it should be a fun project. Obviously, you know, again, what I'll most likely do is take the battery and I'll relocate the battery to over here where the old ECU is, which really isn't an issue. Both sides of it are the same. Kind of looks like a rotted out battery tray like most cars have. But I'll probably relocate the battery to over here. This way we can reuse the factory LS style battery cables that come to this side. We can retain all that. The coolant jug, I kind of already looked at most of it. You've already got kind of your steam port line here. Sorry, here. So like on an LS where it goes to the under the throttle body, kind of has it. This is a bigger hose, obviously, but it has the hose that runs down to the radiator, like most factory LS style, and then it's got the bigger hose that runs in the bottom of it. So we should, and that goes to the water pump. It has a T up here, goes to the heater line, goes to the water pump. So we should be able to reuse that coolant jug, being that the inner fender wells sit up so high on this car, you wouldn't be able to use one out of like a Yukon or something like that. It would take up this whole space. They're tall, really tall jugs. So being that this is a squashed down jug, it's a better option than having to, you know, completely fabricate a coolant jug or find one. I know there's a bunch out there that you can buy that screw in place there. But we'll go through, we'll clean everything up the best we can, and make it look really good. Make it, again, look, the goal to make this engine swap is to make it look like this is how this car came from the factory. So there, you know, nothing crazy on it. He wants a nice cruiser that he can get in, start every time, and just drive, which, you know, is fine with me. This car amazingly has an oil cooler, which I just noticed. It's got a big old oil cooler over here. Some LSs have the oil coolers, some don't. This one, I'm gonna say we're gonna eliminate the oil cooler on this one. More of a ease of installation. I don't have to adapt over to oil cooler lines or do any of that crazy stuff. I did look, one thing that I have to just look into a little bit more, either when I get the new motor here or I take one of the bare blocks I have, I need to stick an oil pan on it once this motor is out and see if it clears the cross member. That was the one thing I did see, is they swap kits. There are swap kits for this car. Comes with a transmission cross member, motor mounts, and an oil pan, like a Holley. It's either the muscle car or something, oil pan that has the more clearance, you know, and the pan is shorter sump on it to keep it away from the ground some. So that'll be something that most likely I'll end up doing, the Holley pan on this. If the truck pan hangs too low. But we got a bunch of parts already coming for this. Motor should be here this week. The adapter plates should be here in a couple of days. So we're gonna start cranking on this one real soon for the customer and get it fired up, running, and get it out of here, and hopefully you'll be happy. So for this one, that's it. Quick update on the other stuff that's going on. The 33, yep, completely back apart with just horrible issues. Both control arms are off this side here. You can kind of see the shock is just hanging and the spindle's just sitting on the tire being held up for now. But we have to basically build new A-arms for his car. After we got it aligned 3 times, the car was still real. You would drive down the road and right around 50 you'd start to really feel it. 60 was getting to the point where you didn't want to go any faster. The car was real darty on the road, like it wanted to walk itself left and right. So it was real darty. And then once we started looking at everything, which I could show you all of that, like just total shit fest with control arms. I got everything on this side all set up. So these are the ends that sat in here, and these bushings with the sleeves are how you adjusted your caster and camber. You would unscrew one out. You could see this one, the lock nut was screwed down in, and then this is the other half where the lock nut is screwed down pretty far. So this one would sit out like this, and this one would sit in like that. And you can see, compared to the bolt, like you have to put so much strain and pressure on these bushings to get that control arm to turn. You know, because that's essentially what you're doing when you adjust this, is you're turning the control arm in a way. But the bolt has to go through that straight. So what it did was just put a ton of strain, and you can see the cracks in the bushings. This car doesn't have 100 miles on it. So when I pulled it all back apart, these are the lower control arm bushings, which you see how they're just falling apart. They're literally so stretched out, they just fall off the sleeve. You can see a crack right there. You can see how it's like blown out from the sleeve, you know, and these are like the softest rubber. Like you could take your finger, that's not my fingernail, that's my finger squashing this in. It is a piece of shit, is really the only way to say it. So it kind of sucks. So I went on Speedway and got these are their polyurethane replacement parts. It's a Speedway 91008-016-1, and these are rock hard, like a polyurethane bushing should be. When I originally bought this kit, this was supposed to be an upgrade. These are supposed to be polyurethane. They're not. They're rubber. They just made them in red rubber to con you and think that they are polyurethane, but they're not. These ball joints are pieces of shit. It's the only way I know how to say it. You can see the threads are literally gone, and this is from tightening it, not with an impact gun, with a wrench, and barely any force on it. The nuts for them, which is it's pretty funny. I gotta walk back and forth. These are the nuts for them. I'll go back over there. Long-winded video, rambling on about crap. These are the nuts. Like you can see, there's only, 2 threads before it starts where the castle is for your cotter pin to go through. Which, they shouldn't be like that. That's not how a ball joint nut should be. So look, this is a Duralast. This is your auto parts store, cheap of the cheap stuff. But when you pull the nut out of that package, you can clearly see the actual thread of that nut is almost, it's damn near as tall as the entire other nut, even with the castellation. So, trying to grab stuff. With this one, you can see you get, 3 or 4 threads before that castle starts. So this nut, that's how the nut should be. The company, they're Tech, who's probably one of the shittiest people you could talk to. That's the only way I could say it. He's rude as hell. Will tell you that these get torqued 25 to 30 inch-pounds. I don't think that's safe. So he told me by taking a hand wrench, and tightening that nut to anything over 30 inch-pounds, will obviously strip it. I don't see that. 25, 30 inch-pounds. From looking online, every manufacturer spec is between like 85 and 165 foot-pounds, which is ridiculously more, much more, ridiculous amount more than what this guy's telling me, and then he insisted that I took an impact gun and blew these on with an impact gun. That's not what I did, but regardless, this is about the Caprice. So that's kind of the update on the 33. We're waiting for all new parts to come in. We have to get these cups because they're $80-something ball joints have a totally different thread than any other company makes. I've called QA1, I've called Moog, I've called everybody, and nobody makes this ball joint with this style shank and that thread. Nobody even makes a ball joint with that thread. So this thread came from this manufacturer's spec, Helix, apparently, or from whatever Chinese shop that they had these parts made in, because every single part is made in China. Every box says made in China. Over the phone, they'll tell you it's made in the USA. So that was kind of a big selling point for us. There was nowhere online that it said made in the USA, but that was kind of a big selling point. All the upgrades that they threw in, polyurethane, quote unquote, was kind of like, okay, they are a good company. It was the first time I used them, but apparently, they're not. And then their tech support is absolutely ridiculous. You can't talk to them during the day. You always got to talk to them at night. I'm Eastern time, they're Pacific time. So their after hours is not, 8, 9 o'clock at night, my time, so, which I don't really understand why it's after hours, but regardless, whatever. So what I'm doing is I'm replacing this cup. This is where the ball joint screws in. I have new cups coming. I got a set of cups, but again, they told me the wrong ball joint. That's the Duralast ball joints that I picked up. and I bought the cup for that ball joint by accident. Or no, I ordered the wrong number cup because it's like a 727 and a 772. And I mixed up the numbers a little bit, so I ordered the wrong cups. But I got all the new ones coming. I ordered all new cups, new ball joints that will thread in. So essentially, I'm going to take the A-arm, I'm going to cut it off, put the new cup, TIG weld them back on. All 4 A-arms are going to get it. The lowers are going to get the Speedway polyurethane bushings, and then the upper, as you can see here, are going to get Heim joints, and that will allow the little ball in a Heim joint will allow the bolt to walk sideways. Well, the bolt's going to stay straight, but it'll allow the control arm to be positioned for caster, you know, and keep the camber where it's got to get pushed out and rolled back, or pulled in and rolled back, whichever it is. That Heim joint will allow that, and allow that bolt to go through the subframe straight and easy. Like we had to beat the bolt through when it was these pieces here. Like it was impossible to get on. You can kind of see how it's blown out, and you know, this side's ripped off. You know, that's not a installation error. That's just how you have to do it when you're trying to smash a bolt straight through a bushing cup that wants to be crooked, has to be crooked because of the design of it. There's no other way than to, you know, kind of beat the bolt in as far as you can, then kind of thread it the rest of the way. And what it ends up doing is starts beating up on the threads of the bolt, you know. So it's just a stupid design. It really is. It's something so simple, you know. Ball joints, make them universal. You know, use whatever ball joint you want. These are off a Dodge Omni or some thing like that, like the Shank Designs. I don't know. But make it to where I could walk in a parts store and buy a ball joint, not have to be forced to order your $80-something ball joint, which is ridiculous, because even QA1 ball joints you can get for 30 bucks, you know, 40 bucks. So it's just stupid, you know, that these companies rely on overseas manufacturers to build stuff for them, and then their quality control is just absolutely horrid. You know, it's just ridiculous. Like the space between the lower control arm on the subframe, there's like almost a ½ inch that the control arm can kind of wiggle back and forth, you know. And then when you tighten it, you know, you're putting stress on the whole system. But then when you tighten it, the shock doesn't fit. Even with it untightened, the shock doesn't fit. You call them and tell them, hey, the shock doesn't fit. Oh, just grind a little bit away. So you gotta cut. I cut damn near like 1/4 of an inch off this tube just to get the shock to fit in there. Then what you find is that the shock bushings are no different than these, other than they made them a pretty red color. But when the bushing is sitting in there like this, it'll push over the tube because there's so much pressure, and these are so soft. I literally, when I took this control arm off, the shock bushing was left on this tube here. It had pushed out of the shock and it was stuck on this tube, something like that. And I thought, what the hell? So obviously that's yet another design flaw where this tube isn't quite, you know, it's not much bigger than the sleeve. So obviously the bushing will walk out, you know. Simple, put a washer in there, you know, but there's not enough room to put a washer in there. But I mean, regardless, you know, whatever, it's for a whole new video. I'll make a whole nother video and I'll talk crazy shit about that. Chris's Mustang, injectors are in, ton of work done on this. I'll make a whole nother video on this one. I have to watch the other one to see where I left off because a couple of videos got screwed up, so I wasn't able to post them up. But I mean, we got a ton going on right now. We still have the Monte Carlo, just waiting on the customer for that one. The 35 is gone. and that guy couldn't be happier, which is perfect for me. There was one little thing left undone with the wiring for something. There was something left undone. Oh, it was like extra wires they had stabbed into the fuse blocks that they made. So it needs an extra fuse block added to be able to run those circuits individually on their own fuses instead of piggybacking them to other fuses. Anyways, long video. That's pretty much where we're at right now. We got a ton going on. We also have the Escalade that's going to be coming up. We might have a Corvette, Pro-Charged Corvette, that he windowed the block on, and that'll be a full engine build and swap in that car, and then probably dyno tune in that car. So we are busy. So I appreciate you staying with me, watching the whole video. Give me a thumbs up, please. Give me a thumbs up if you're watching the video. Subscribe, hit the bell to get notified of other videos, and leave a comment. We always like to interact with people, so leave a comment. Thank you. Have a good day.